Have you noticed your grocery bill creeping up, or the price of a new phone rising every year? It's not just inflation or local stores, it's a global economic conflict. This hidden war is a trade battle between Western powers like the US and the rising BRICS nations. Instead of soldiers, the weapons are tariffs, taxes on imports that directly impact what you pay at the store. The price of your coffee, your car, even your clothes, is shaped by this global rivalry. Decisions made in Washington, Beijing, or Brasilia can change the price of milk in your supermarket. For decades, the US and its allies set the rules of global trade, but now, BRICS is challenging that order. When these economic giants clash, tariffs ripple through the supply chain, landing on your receipt. This isn't just about economics, it's about power, resources, and influence. As these forces collide, everyday people feel the squeeze. Let's break down how this global tug-of-war is making your wallet lighter. So, what's a tariff? You've probably heard the word tossed around in the news, especially when countries are in the middle of a trade dispute, or when prices suddenly spike at your local store. Simply put, a tariff is a tax that a government places on goods imported from another country. It's like a fee that gets added whenever something crosses a border. For example, if the US puts a 25% tariff on Brazilian coffee, importers have to pay that extra charge just to bring the beans in. That extra cost doesn't just disappear, it gets passed along the chain, eventually landing on your receipt at the coffee shop. Governments use tariffs for a few reasons. Sometimes, it's to protect local industries from foreign competition, giving homegrown businesses a better shot. Other times, it's a way to collect money for the government, or even as a bargaining chip in international negotiations. But here's the catch: companies almost never absorb the cost themselves. Instead, they raise prices, so you end up paying more for everyday items, from groceries to gadgets. Tariffs on raw materials like steel or aluminum don't just affect one product, they ripple through the economy, making everything from cars to refrigerators and even canned food more expensive. It's like tossing a stone in a pond. The ripples spread outward, raising prices across the entire economy. Even if you don't buy imported goods directly, you'll still feel the effects. Even a small tariff can have a surprisingly big impact, making goods pricier at every step of the supply chain, from the factory floor to the store shelf. Ultimately, tariffs act as a hidden tax on consumers. You might not see it itemized, but it's there, quietly inflating your bills. They're a powerful tool in global politics, shaping relationships between countries, but at the end of the day, the bill lands in your lap. So, next time your morning coffee costs a little more, remember, it's not just about the beans, it's about global strategy, international negotiations, and the hidden costs of world trade. Tariffs shape what you pay, often in ways you don't see, influencing the price of everything from electronics to clothing. Understanding tariffs is key to understanding why your bills keep rising and how global events can hit your wallet at home. Let's dive deeper and see who's driving this new era of trade wars and what it means for all of us. The global economy used to be dominated by the US and Europe, but BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are changing the game. These fast-growing economies felt sidelined by Western-led systems, so they formed their own bloc. BRICS isn't just talk. They've built their own development bank and are trading more with each other, often bypassing the US dollar. In 2024, BRICS expanded, adding Saudi Arabia, Iran, Ethiopia, Egypt, and the UAE. Now, they control huge shares of global resources and population, nearly half the world. As BRICS grows, it's building its own trade networks and supply chains, reducing reliance on the West. This shift is fueling today's trade wars. The US sees BRICS, especially China, as a challenge to its dominance. That's why tariffs and trade barriers are on the rise. The world's economic center of gravity is shifting, and the friction is felt everywhere. Let's look at how this rivalry plays out on the front lines. The US has responded to the rapid rise of BRICS nations with a wave of aggressive tariffs, especially zeroing in on China. These tariffs are not just numbers on a spreadsheet, they represent a dramatic shift in global economic strategy, signaling a new era of competition and confrontation. Both Democratic and Republican leaders have embraced tariffs as a tool to counter what they describe as unfair trade practices. In heated debates on Capitol Hill, politicians from both sides argue that these measures are necessary to protect American jobs and industries from foreign competition. But the issue goes far beyond simple trade imbalances. At its core, this is about slowing China's rapid technological and economic ascent. The US fears losing its edge in critical sectors like artificial intelligence, robotics, and advanced manufacturing. The ultimate goal is to make US supply chains less dependent on China. pushing American and global companies to move their manufacturing to other countries in Asia or even back home. This shift is already reshaping the global map of production and logistics. Tariffs on Chinese electronics, for example, drive up costs for tech giants like Apple and Samsung. These companies, facing higher expenses, often pass those costs directly to you, the consumer, making everyday gadgets more expensive. And this strategy isn't limited to China. The US has ongoing disputes with India over agricultural products and with Brazil over steel exports, broadening the scope of these economic battles. Each move triggers a response. If the US taxes Brazilian steel, Brazil might retaliate by taxing American soybeans, creating a cycle of escalating tariffs and counter-tariffs. This tit-for-tat escalation is the very definition of a trade war, a series of back-and-forth measures that can spiral out of control, grabbing headlines and rattling markets worldwide. The result? Uncertainty for businesses trying to plan for the future, higher prices for consumers at the checkout, and a global market that becomes less efficient and more unpredictable. The economic battlefield is everywhere, from the factory floor to your local store and even in the warehouses and trucks that keep goods moving. Trade wars are no longer distant or abstract. They're shaping your daily life, influencing what you pay and what you can afford. Let's take a closer look at how these tariffs are hitting your wallet, affecting everything from groceries to electronics. The impact is closer than you think, felt in every bill, every shopping trip, and every family budget across the country. Tariffs mean higher prices, plain and simple. A 10% tariff on a $300 TV, you'll likely pay $330 at the store. Multiply that across thousands of products and your cost of living climbs. Tariffs on raw materials like steel force US manufacturers to pay more, so even American-made goods get pricier. Groceries aren't immune. Tariffs on imported food, fertilizer, or equipment push supermarket prices up. Even your morning coffee or favorite fruit can cost more due to trade disputes. When imports get expensive, local companies face less competition and may raise their own prices. The end result? Fewer choices, higher bills, and a squeeze on family budgets. Inflation rises, and your paycheck doesn't stretch as far. Tariffs are a hidden tax, paid by you every time you shop. The global trade war is felt in every aisle and every receipt, but the impact goes beyond prices. It hits jobs and families too. Trade wars aren't just about numbers, they hit real people. Tariffs may help a few workers in protected industries, but they hurt many more in sectors that rely on imported materials. For example, steel tariffs might help steel workers, but raise costs for car makers and builders, risking layoffs. American farmers are especially vulnerable. When the US imposes tariffs, countries like China retaliate by taxing US crops, slashing demand and income. The pain is global. A factory worker in China or a coffee grower in Brazil can lose their livelihood overnight. Families lifted by global trade can fall back into hardship due to distant political decisions. The promise of bringing jobs home is often more complicated and painful than it sounds. The global supply chain is deeply tangled. Tariffs disrupt jobs on both sides. Economic anxiety and instability ripple through working-class families worldwide. The human cost of trade wars is real, and it's often overlooked. BRICS nations aren't just reacting, they're building alternatives. They're trading more in their own currencies, bypassing the US dollar and reducing Western influence. This de-dollarization helps them avoid US sanctions and financial pressure. BRICS countries are redirecting trade. If the US blocks Chinese solar panels, China sells them elsewhere in the bloc. Russia, cut off from Europe, sends oil and gas to China and India. These moves create a powerful, self-sustaining economic network outside Western control. The result? A fragmented world economy with two major blocs competing for influence. Trade won't stop, but it will get more complicated and costly. Businesses and consumers face more uncertainty as supply chains are rebuilt. BRICS isn't just reacting, it's reshaping the global order. The world map of trade is being redrawn. Let's take a closer look at how these global trade wars actually hit home and affect our everyday lives. Think about your morning coffee. If tariffs are imposed on BRICS producers like Brazil or Ethiopia, the cost of importing those coffee beans rises, and that extra expense gets passed on to you. Suddenly, your daily cup costs more, and you might even notice fewer options at your favorite cafe. Smartphones are truly global products, designed in the US, assembled in China, and built with parts sourced from all over the world. Each step in this chain is vulnerable to tariffs and trade barriers. When the US places tariffs on Chinese goods, the cost of making these phones goes up, and that means you pay more at the store, whether you're upgrading or replacing a broken device. The same story plays out with cars. Tariffs on steel, aluminum, or electronic components drive up the cost of both imported vehicles and those made in America, since many parts come from abroad. So, if you're shopping for a new car, those higher prices you see on the lot are partly a result of these ongoing global trade tensions and the extra costs manufacturers face. Even your groceries aren't immune. Tariffs on imported fruits, seafood, or even farm equipment can make food more expensive or harder to find, affecting what ends up on your dinner table. And it's not just consumers who feel the pinch. When other countries retaliate by taxing American products like cheese or wine, U.S. farmers and winemakers lose valuable markets, sometimes leaving their goods unsold. This tit-for-tat escalation disrupts the flow of goods around the world, leading to delays, empty shelves, and fewer choices for everyone. Every trip to the store, whether you're buying groceries or household items, is shaped by these global economic battles, often in ways you might not even realize. The impact is everywhere, from the food on your breakfast table to the price tag on your next big appliance or electronic purchase. Trade wars aren't just headlines in the news, they're woven into your daily routine, affecting what you buy, what you eat, and even how you commute. Understanding how these trade wars work helps you make sense of why prices are rising and empowers you to make smarter choices in a changing world. It's easy to think trade wars are just for experts, but they shape your daily life. The West versus BRICS rivalry is reorganizing the world, and your household budget. Prices are more volatile, supply chains less reliable, and political decisions hit your wallet faster than ever. Jobs shift as companies adapt. Some industries shrink, others grow. Workers in global industries face uncertainty, while some in protected sectors see new opportunities. The link between tariff policy and your paycheck has never been clearer. We're all pieces in this global chess game, and the moves made today will shape our future. The cost of living, job security, and the structure of the world economy are all at stake. By paying attention, you're not just watching the news, you're preparing for what's next. In this interconnected age, global awareness is personal survival. The hidden war in your wallet is real, and understanding it is your best defense.